Have you struggled having an accurate sense of your worth as a photographer?
Most definitely.
Emily, so great to have you on today. What do I need to know about your past and your upbringing to better understand what you do today?
I'm from Calgary, Canada, but I actually grew up in China as a international student. And I recently only came back to Canada 5 years ago to go to university. And so I always have that like international influence. And I feel like that helps me better connect with people. And I think that's really translated in my photography as well. I'm currently in my final semester at school studying sociology and religious studies. And I feel like that also helps further my outlook on life and understanding of society and humanity. And I feel like with my photos, that's what I really want to showcase as well. It's just empowering individuals and embracing the uniqueness of everyone.
How did you end up in photography? Did you kind of stumble into it, or is it something that you've had a passion for a long time?
So I've always loved the arts, and my family is super creative. And there's my parents are so supportive with the arts. Like my older sister is a graphic designer, my younger brother is an animator. So my parents have always pushed us to do the arts. And when we were younger, my dad would actually help us recreate music videos to some of our favorite artists. And so when I was in seventh grade, we were recreating music videos with my friends. And then that's when I realized, like, oh, you can use a camera to tell a story. And, it's in middle school. So in that time, you really just want to express yourself and, kind of find an outlet for however you're feeling. And so that's how I found photography.
Tell me about your photography. I checked out your portfolio, checked out what you're
Mhm.
all about. It sounds like you're really passionate about storytelling and capturing emotions.
With my photography, I love being able to, I guess, show who people are. Right now, I'm kind of transitioning my photography to be more brand based because I've kind of fallen in love with being able to create campaigns for clothing brands and jewelry brands. And so I'm still telling stories, but it's not so much about the emotions on the inside of the individual person I'm photographing. It's more so telling the story of how can we use these pieces in everyday life.
How did you discover your love for brand photography?
So I started my photography in Calgary when the pandemic happened because I was really bored.
Mhm.
And I decided, oh, might as well just try it again. That's when I kind of discovered in Calgary, there's so many local brands, so many local artists, and how you can really use photography to showcase the pieces to like the best of just showcase them and,
Mm.
make them the focus. And so I've been working a lot with a lot of local businesses here in Calgary. And also during the pandemic, a lot of people started selling things online.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that kind of paralleled and like with my growth of photography, there was a growth of all these local businesses and just it started to just work together.
How did you build these relationships with these local businesses? Like, did you have to look for them, or did you just physically go out, or what was your approach?
In Calgary, everything's very hidden.
Hmm.
It's so like there is a creative community. There's like a whole bunch of creative people, but the thing is, you really have to search for it. And that's like what everyone I know says. It's like there are things to do here and there are places to go. You just have to really search for it. And so that's what I had to do as well. I had to basically deep dive onto Instagram and
Hmm.
find all of these different businesses. And really, what I did was I just reached out to them,
Hmm.
just sending out a bunch of emails or DMs. And luckily, I got a few messages back. So, and then it was just like a snowball effect after that.
Can you tell me a few of your most memorable stories?
Yeah. So I think this was back in 2020, I think end of 2020. I was really small on Instagram. I mean, I'm still relatively small on Instagram, but like almost like you didn't even know who I was, especially in Calgary. And
Mm.
I reached out to this one clothing company called Fawn Studios. I remember being so nervous about reaching out to them because they've been to like Paris Fashion Week. And I reached out to them, didn't know who they were. I was just like, hi, I'm a photographer. I'd love to collaborate with you and do a shoot. And they're like, yeah, of course, that sounds great. I was like, oh
That's
my
wild.
goodness, this is so exciting. And it was my first time ever shooting with an actual like styled look from like a clothing brand, and also my first time ever shooting with a signed model. And that just like changed the way I saw things, because before I worked with people who were just doing it for fun, but now I work with people who take it seriously, and I love both. But yeah, that was quite memorable for me. It really like showed to me like, yeah, I can do this.
What's the biggest difference between working with people who do this for fun and people who are professionals?
People who are there as professionals, they have the experience, they have the practice, they know how to work for brands, they know how to angle their bodies, what way their face should look, they know the facial expressions, and they're usually not afraid to do that type of stuff, and they're not
Mm.
afraid of a bad image. A lot of the people I work with as well that just do it for fun, they're also amazing in front of the camera.
Mm.
But it's like it's a different approach that they have. A lot of the times when they're doing it for fun, they're used to taking their own photos. And
Mm.
so what comes with that is that the way that they pose, it's very, I guess, Instagram influencer, not trying to like say anything bad about that, because of course
Totally.
that in itself is its own art.
How much did you have to adjust your the way you photograph once you started working more professionally? Well, let's with this particular brand.
My photographs before were really like heavy on like the person and like who they are and their essence. But now I kind of direct my photos, and during a shoot, I'm always like, okay, what am I selling here?
Mm-hmm.
So, am I selling the clothes? What am I selling the clothes? Am I selling the model? Because sometimes, you're selling the models like youthfulness or their beauty, if it's a beauty shoot. Um, so I really had to kind of change my intention during a shoot
Mm.
to be really mindful of exactly what I'm doing.
From 1 out of 10, how prepared do you think you were for that initial shoot? One being super not prepared, 10 being super prepared.
Like 0. It's so bad. Okay. Like, so I had to take an Uber there. And so there's two like places to meet up at the park we were meeting at.
Mhm.
She was parked at the top. I was parked all the way at the bottom with the Uber.
Wow.
And then, so like I called her. I'm already like 30 minutes late because the Uber took so long to get there. I called her. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm like at the bottom. She's like, okay, that's fine. We can drive there. The sun's already beginning to set, like basically blue hour. So it's like dark outside. And I was just
Wow.
like, oh my gosh, this is like the worst thing ever. But the photos were fine. I was just not prepared. I didn't know what to expect. And I was there like alone with like my backpack and just like standing there awkwardly.
Emily, that sounds wild. What are some of the ways that you decide if you want to work with a brand or, maybe that's not something, well, maybe it's not the right fit.
Yeah, so I usually look at what they already have out. What
Hmm.
are their products? What kind of photos do they already have? And then if I like their stuff and I feel like, oh yeah, I could definitely see myself doing a shoot with that, then I'll ask them more about, okay, like, do you have any inspiration? Do you have any ideas of what you want? And if it kind of matches in line and I think I can produce those photos for them, because I also don't want to take on a job where I think that I won't be able to give them 100%. So if I don't think I can do it, then I'm going to be like, sorry, try
Mm,
like this photographer, or I'll recommend other people that they can go to.
yeah. Sounds like you're doing a really great job, like being consistent. And it
Thank
sounds
you.
like you're just like a really driven human being. At what point did the switch turn and you made a conscious choice to, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to chase after this. This is going to be a profession, not just a hobby.
I think when that happened, so I decided to start it up again in the pandemic because I've been doing photography for so long before that. And
Yeah.
before it was like, I saw it more as an art form. And
Yeah.
then when I decided to start it up in the pandemic, that also to me I saw as an art form. And then I met my one fantastic friend who I have now. I met her during the pandemic.
Mm.
We like met through Instagram and stuff. She likes to model for photos, but she also does amazing like creative direction as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I met her, she kind of like introduced me to the creative world in Calgary because
Mm-hmm.
she has a lot of connections. Like
Mm.
I thought I did, but she has like she knows everyone. It's amazing. Um, but after I met her and she kind of introduced me to the world of photography in Calgary, that's when I was kind of like, oh, like there's so much opportunity here. There's so much I can do here. This is something that I want to be part of. And so I just kept on working through it kind of as a hobby as I was still in school. But then I started to get also like more recognition. I started to make more friends and I realized like, oh, like other people can do this as a job. And like this has probably always been my dream job.
Mm-hmm.
So might as well pursue it.
What's the photography and art scene like in Calgary?
The photography and art scene is pretty big. There's like a lot of different genres, I guess. Because when I first came to Calgary, I only knew of the photography that was kind of like the car photography.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what a lot of my cousins are like kind of into. You know, they all love their cars, and so I only saw the car photography side. After meeting my friend Michaela, she kind of showed me like, no, there's so much more you can do. There's a lot of amazing wedding photographers. Here in Calgary, there's actually a lot of boudoir photographers, which I find fascinating.
Mm.
Um, I mean, the landscape here is incredible, so a lot of people take advantage of it. The community here is everyone's super nice to each other and super collaborative and very helpful. And, you know, you always meet everyone.
Do you have any networking tips to anyone starting out?
I would say just reach out to people. Just start by, you know, reaching out to whoever's work that you like, or if there's anyone that you want to work with. If you're a new photographer and you want to work with a model, reach out to the model and say, like, hey, like, do you want to do a collaborative shoot? If they say no, it's like, that's fine. You know, at least
Mhm.
you tried. Yeah, I would honestly just say, just start reaching out to people and get out of your comfort zone.
Do you have any don'ts in how you should reach out?
Yes. I mean, my personal rule is
Yeah.
if I reach out to someone, it's a collaborative shoot from my side. I don't know about their side, they might send me their rates, but from my side as a photographer, if I reach out to someone wanting to shoot with them, I'm not expecting them to pay me because I am the one that went out there to ask them.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're a photographer, I wouldn't just cold message people and be like, hey, do you want to shoot with me? Here are my rates.
Mm.
Because to me, it just feels kind of rude to immediately be like, hey, I don't know you, but do you want to pay me?
Mm.
You know, it's like at least let them test the waters a little bit first.
What was your approach to pricing your photography services?
Yeah, so I've changed my pricing so many times in the past 3 years. I um it used to be like based by the hour, and then I've had people say, don't do that. Don't base it by the hour
Mm-hmm.
because 1 hour's worth of work is actually it's quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I kind of base it. I have different packages that I offer. And so the different packages like include more and more things. And so, yeah, and then my pricing, I kind of match it to what other photographers are doing. And
Mm-hmm.
I take into account how much time I spend editing, how much time I spent at the shoot. Um, is it at the studio? Is it outdoors? What are the different things I have to account for?
Mm.
And so pricing to me has always it's been tough. I don't like telling people like they have to pay me,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a good thing to have, and it definitely showcases your value as a photographer because you don't
Mm.
want people to think that you'll do anything for free.
Have you struggled having an accurate sense of your worth as a photographer?
Most definitely. I struggle with that all the time, and I feel like everyone else struggles with it. You know, there's so many amazing photographers out there, and, like, it can be quite disheartening too, like, when you wanna work with someone, but they don't wanna work with you, or, you're planning a shoot with someone, all of a sudden they just ghost,
Mm.
even with, like, the pressure of social media and, like, the numbers on social media, that can get to you as well. I'm always questioning the quality of my work all the time, but then I have, like, amazing support system that just keeps on encouraging me, and so, yeah.
How do you, for people who don't necessarily have a family that supports them, how would they find these relationships and these connections?
I definitely think if they use social media, you can find those connections through social media. Like, when I did first start out back in, the pandemic, all I also had was social media as well.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I had my parents, but, they were still in China at the time, and I didn't know my friend Michaela yet.
Mhm.
So all I had was kind of the people online, and you kind of build those relationships with whoever you meet online too. And it's up to you of how, I guess, seriously you want to take those relationships. It's all up to the person of if they value those interpersonal relationships that they build online.
It sounds like you were put in a position a lot where you had to act, yeah, where you had to take initiative.
Like, looking back, I'm quite surprised at how out of my comfort zone I went,
Mhm.
because even now I'm
Wow.
like, wow, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
And I still do that today. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm always shocked by myself. Not to sound like weird or anything, but I'm always
Mm.
shocked by myself at how out of my comfort zone I go with photography and how it's really helped me build that confidence with talking to strangers.
On that, could you tell me some of the hardest things that you ever had to do?
One of the hardest shoots I've ever
Mhm.
had to do
Yeah.
was shooting in the dead of winter for a brand, and everyone was freezing, and I was getting really frustrated because everyone was, like, kind of complaining about how cold it was, and so I had to
Yeah.
stop the shoot multiple times, and I understand why they were complaining. It was freezing outside and snowing, and, they were just wearing, like, um well, they were wearing layers of sweatshirts and sweatpants,
Mm.
and so I guess one of the hardest things is when shoots don't go your way. But with that, I'd say you just kind of have to go with it, and whatever happens will happens because usually it's for the best.
So, Emily, part of the success that I see in you is comes from very internally. Well, you seem like a very driven person. What are some of the key skills that you look back and you say, "Wow, I'm really grateful I am like this," because without that, maybe I would not be here today.
I think one of the biggest things is being open to change and being adaptable to any sort of situation, and, like, being able to think quickly on your feet.
Mm.
Because, like I said before, you can't always control everything. And also, times are changing. Like, everything's cyclical, everything's changing. That's just one of the constant natures of humanity. Everything's constantly changing.
Mm.
Photography trends are changing, what people like and dislike are changing. And so, being able to adapt yourself to those situations, I find, is quite important. And kind of being able to reflect upon who you are and not being stuck in what you personally like, because sometimes you're not always right. Sometimes you're wrong,
Mhm.
and you have to be open to that.
Could you tell me a story of some of your lowest moments, some of the most defining struggles in your photography journey so far?
There's been, like, a few times where I've, like, broken down and started, like, crying from, like, being so anxious or panicking about it.
Mhm.
Um, there's, like, this one time I was actually with my friend Michaela, and so I have a exhibition coming up with a bunch of other photographers, and
Mhm.
so that's been a huge not stress for me, but I just want to make sure that the photos are like beautiful, of course. And so I put too much pressure on myself to book this one studio, to have like the right model, to have like everything to be perfect. And on the day, I like showed up to the studio an hour late because I got the timings mixed up. I had
Wow.
like a certain amount of time with the model. Everything just was not going according to plan. And I just started like crying because I was just so like disappointed in myself.
How long
Yeah.
ago was this?
I think this was like 3 months ago. So
Three
pretty
months.
recent, this one. Yeah. After that, I kind of realized, like, yeah, you can put a lot of effort into a shoot. But like I said before, things happen, right? Like I mixed up the times, like that was my fault. And, I lost like my deposit on the studio and that's okay because it just means that the next shoot I'm going to do, I know what not to do. And so I should just go with the flow. The flow of things.
That sounds like a positive mentality to me. Although, of course, there
I
was the
try.
downside.
I
Yeah.
try.
As a photographer, when you position yourself to be attractive to brands,
Mhm.
what in your experience is it more beneficial to go down a particular niche, for example, fashion product like skincare products, or is it in your experience better if you have a diversity of various industries, maybe beauty, fitness, um, fast fashion? What are your thoughts on that?
It's important to have a specific niche. Just personally, I find that when you start diversifying, it can be quite overwhelming. So for me, I like to focus on working with local, sustainable, ethical brands. Really, I really like to work with local brands, especially Canadian brands, and I feel like that puts me in a great position, especially with being in Calgary. I think it's good to figure out what you like. So I know that I like fashion, and I know that I like jewelry, and I know that I have a studio where I can do beauty and makeup and skincare. And so I like to position myself to say I have all these availabilities and I have access to certain things. Here's some of my work. Like here you go. Like
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Sounds so gotta know your resources, what you can
Mhm.
do,
Yeah.
combine, and then gotta know what you like. You gotta enjoy what you do. Okay, that makes sense. Did you have a struggle with having so many interests, so many niche options? Because with the studio, like you can do a lot. I see how that could pose a challenge in choosing your lane. Could you walk me through that wrestle?
Yeah, so the reason why I do studio so much is because Calgary's weather is just not favorable during the winter period. I would love to do outdoors all the time but yeah, so that's why I do studio a lot and I do love studio. I'm still getting used to it because it's not like my specialty at all. But yeah, so I used to diversify myself and be like, I can do everything. Like,
Yeah.
just ask me and I can make sure I do it. Like, I'll
Mhm.
work myself till the very end to make sure I do it. But then I
Wow.
had this call with this photographer actually in California. He basically told me like, don't diversify yourself. You want to stick to a specific thing that you know you're good at because brands will be able to see they will be able to see that and they also like if you're posting a whole bunch of different things, even they're going to get confused looking at your stuff being like, "Okay, so what do you do then?"
Yeah.
And so right now I'm trying to position myself personally to be outdoors and studio, but really focused on the brand.
Do you favor a particular product that you like shooting?
I love clothes.
Clothes?
Yeah, I love the movement that they give. I love how, like, with clothes, you can tell so many stories. Like, you could have a model like running down a street, and there you go.
Yeah.
Like, look, you can run in the clothes, and it gives that sense of maybe like they're running in a neighborhood, and oh, there's that sense of like nostalgia of like being a kid of running in the neighborhood, like with your fancy dress on or something like that.
That sounds cool. You painted quite a picture there. Like I
Now that
can
I
see
say
it.
that, I'm like, I really wanna do that.
What I love about the photography that you do is the way you use color and lighting. What are some of your biggest influences stylistically?
Stylistically, well, my number one influence, like, that inspires me is music videos.
Mm,
I love looking at the way that music videos can tell the emotions that the songs are trying to portray through the video.
hmm.
Usually music videos have, like, the coolest lighting,
Yeah.
'cause they're not constrained well, some of them are not constrained to the realistic, like, reality of the physical world, and so
Hmm.
I love being able to see that and then try to find ways I can incorporate that into my photography.
Wow. And could you actually walk me through your day to day? Like, what does a typical day look like for you?
Usually, I'm at school.
Mm.
Um, and usually in the mornings, I actually because I work remote full time, and so my mornings are reserved for business calls,
Yeah.
and then I'm at school, and then when I get home, uh, it's like a mix between editing photos or doing things for my work. The weekends is what I reserve for photo shoots.
Mm.
Yeah, so I usually have 2 or 3 photo shoots every weekend.
Wow. That sounds like a busy schedule when you're in school full time, working full time, running a studio,
Yeah.
and wow, how do you manage your work and your life? Well, your personal life with your work, just what's that like?
Um, it's been tough, especially this last, year, it's been more tough because I'm finishing up my school year, and so I've been spending more time focused on school, but so far, it's just all about being able to well, for me personally, I don't know if this will work for everyone, but for me, it's like, if I'm focusing on school, I'm only focusing on school. I don't let myself think, "Oh, but I have to go do this, and I have to go do that." I'm like, "No, like, you're gonna be fine. Just you dedicated this time to a specific task, so just get that done, and then you can focus on other things." And I always have, like, my notebook or a piece of paper next to me, so if a thought of, like, photography or work or school comes in, I just write it down, and then I don't have to think about it because 'cause I've already
Mm.
written it down.
Is the long-term goal to create your own sort of agency?
I think a long-term goal of mine is to kind of create like, establish a business out of myself and then kind of have maybe a team that I work with. I don't know quite yet if I want to have, like, a full-on team, um, but, yeah, I've worked with before in the past with having an assistant, and that helps so much.
Wow,
I will
really?
say that, like, it really does help a lot.
Wow. In what ways?
So, like, they can help you with the lighting, they can help you, like, hold things up, or, like, let's say I'm doing photos and I'm like, "Oh, I need the model's hair, like, moved just, like, a smidge, but I don't wanna leave my spot." I'm like, "Okay, can
Hmm.
you go do that?"
Looking back to when you started, is there anything that you would do differently if you could start again?
Not really, actually, because the way I see it too, it's kind of like everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't if there's, like, a shoot I failed, I probably failed that because I made a mistake, and I learned from that mistake, so
Mhm.
looking back, I wouldn't really change anything because I love where I am right now.
And follow up to that, is
Mhm.
there anything that you wish you knew sooner that would have saved you a lot more time in the long run?
People are not as scary as you might think they are. Because, like I said before, you really just have to get out of your comfort zone and reach out to people, and so, yeah, one of the things I wish I knew sooner was that there's nothing wrong with reaching out and, getting yourself out there because at the end of the day, that's how everyone else kinda started too, was through the networking. And then another thing that I wish I knew sooner was, like, on a more technical photography side, was technical lighting,
Mhm,
because I'm still learning that now because 'cause I've never done any formal photography classes before,
mhm.
and so it's a skill I'm trying to teach myself, and so I guess I wish I knew or I did a photography class beforehand, because that probably would save me some time now.
The lifestyle, is it what you thought it would be like? Or were you surprised by anything?
I'm honestly still surprised to this day that I get to take photographs and be paid for it.
Yeah.
Because before the when I started university, I really wanted to go the academic route and get into research and, really just do a whole bunch of studying and conducting surveys and, researching things with professors and stuff like that. Like that used to be my dream. So the fact that like today I am able to be creative and be paid for it and people love my work and people want to shoot with me and everything like that, I'm just so grateful for it and just so shocked that it's even happening. And like I know that like my younger self would be so happy. So
What would you say to your younger self?
don't be afraid to post what you love on Instagram or like to do what you love. Like, don't think about what other people will think. Cause I used to worry about that so much when I was younger, especially like, what will like the people I go to school with think if I'm posting these like super like creative or makeup heavy shoots on my Instagram? Like, when I was younger, I used to like I would hear people talking about it and it would always get to me. And then
Mm.
so I would just tell my younger self, like, who cares? If that's what you love, then that's what you love. When you get older, you're gonna find other people who love that too. You just gotta stick with it.
It's a good one. That resonates with me. I still feel that. Totally feel that with every post, every reel, especially if it's so different from what I think I look like to other people. For example,
Mhm.
I'll post like a weekly, oh, the month of April, like a little carousel, then something completely random on a separate channel. But that resonates with me.
I still have troubles like posting pictures of my own face. So there's things I'm
Mm.
still working through. So yeah.
Do you have any last words to anybody starting out?
Practice. Make your friends or family or anyone that's close to you take photos. Just constantly just practice, 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 because how are you going to be able to improve upon yourself if you're not constantly doing it, especially if it's what you love, you know?